Something strange happens to a woman when she crosses 40, and most men don't see it until their entire marriage is already falling apart. One day she's laughing with the kids, planning dinner, moving through life the way she always has. The next day she's distant, irritated, glued to her phone, suddenly obsessed with her appearance, acting like she's living a secret life inside her own mind. You try to calm yourself and tell yourself she's stressed, maybe tired, maybe overwhelmed, but deep down you know something has shifted. Something you can feel but can't explain. And here's the truth nobody warns men about. She doesn't change slowly. She changes suddenly, almost overnight. Her priorities shift, her personality shifts, and her entire identity begins to crack. She starts searching for something she can't even name. And if you've ever looked at your wife and thought, "This isn't the woman I married," you're about to learn exactly why. Most men don't realize that a woman's psychological world is built on foundations that begin shifting long before she turns 40. For years, she lives inside a predictable identity: wife, mother, caretaker, supporter. And even if she struggles or complains, she still knows who she is. But somewhere between 35 and 45, an invisible switch begins flipping inside her. Her hormones change, her dopamine levels drop, her sense of importance fades, and she starts questioning everything she has built. Suddenly, the life she once felt proud of begins to feel too small. The routine that once gave her security now feels like a cage. And the husband she once adored becomes a mirror reflecting her aging, her fading beauty, and her lost youth. This is the moment men misunderstand. They think she's just stressed or emotional. But what's happening inside her is far deeper. A crisis of identity, a feeling that she's disappearing, a panic that she wasted her best years being responsible while the world moved on without her. She begins craving validation, excitement, and proof that she still matters. And because she doesn't know how to express this fear, it comes out as irritation, distance, secretiveness, or sudden emotional explosions. Most men miss these early signs, and by the time they notice something is really wrong, she's already mentally checked out. What feels sudden to you has been building inside her for years, silently, piece by piece, inside every woman, pour nay, whether she admits it or not. Her sense of worth has always been tied to how the world sees her. From her teenage years, she learned that beauty equals value, attention equals importance, desire equals identity. For 2 decades, this system works flawlessly. Men notice her, compliment her, chase her, treat her like she's glowing. She doesn't even have to think about her attractiveness. It's automatic. But when she crosses 40, the world around her begins to change, and the validation she never had to earn suddenly becomes rare. This is where the collapse begins. She looks in the mirror and doesn't see the woman she remembers. Not worse, just different. And that difference scares her. The same way an athlete feels when his knees stop cooperating, or a singer feels when her voice weakens. Her value system, built entirely on being desired, starts cracking. The compliments slow down, the stares become polite, and the attention she was once flooded with becomes a trickle. This is not vanity. It's identity loss. It's the feeling of becoming invisible to the world she once dominated effortlessly. So she panics. She buys new clothes, changes her hair, tries to reclaim the version of herself she remembers. But the harder she tries to look young, the more she realizes she isn't that girl anymore. And this internal conflict between who she was and who she's becoming creates a psychological storm. A storm she hides behind a smile, behind laughter, behind "I'm fine." But inside, she feels like she's disappearing, and she'll do anything to feel alive again. When a woman crosses 40, something changes in the way her brain responds to attention. The same compliment that barely affected her at 22 suddenly hits her like a shot of dopamine. Not because she wants to cheat, not because she's evil, but because she's starving for something she didn't even realize she depended on her entire life: feeling desired. For years, your attention was enough. You loved her, supported her, stayed loyal, and she appreciated it. But as time passed, your love became routine, familiar, predictable, and predictable love no longer gives her the emotional high it once did. She begins craving novelty, excitement, and proof that her beauty, and therefore her identity, still matters. So when a stranger smiles at her, when a coworker compliments her hair, when a man online reacts to her photos, her brain lights up in ways it hasn't in years. It makes her feel young again, visible again, relevant again. That small spark of validation can feel more powerful than a decade of stable love at home. Your devotion in her mind is guaranteed, but the attention of another man feels earned, unexpected, and thrilling. This is why men get blindsided. You think everything is normal, but inside her, these little moments become emotional fuel, slowly pulling her away from you and toward the fantasy of being desired again. She's not chasing another man, she's chasing a feeling she lost, and fears she will never get back. One of the clearest warning signs that a woman is entering her emotional danger zone is when she begins talking about her past with a strange new glow in her eyes. Stories she once shrugged off suddenly become meaningful. Ex-boyfriends she used to mock now become not that bad. Her wild 20s, which she used to laugh about, now feel like a lost treasure. This shift is not random, it's psychological. When a woman feels her present life shrinking, she begins romanticizing her past because it's the only place where she still feels young, exciting and desired. Nostalgia becomes her escape, not from you, but from the version of herself she's becoming. She starts looking through old photos, reconnecting with old friends, replaying old memories like a movie she misses. And the dangerous part? Those memories become more emotionally stimulating than her actual life. In her mind, her younger self represents freedom, confidence, and possibility. Meanwhile, her present life represents responsibility, routine, and aging. So naturally, she starts gravitating toward the lighter, more thrilling version of her identity. This is when she may begin comparing you, her real husband, to idealized fantasies of men she dated decades ago. Not because those men were better, but because she associates them with a time when she felt alive, and because her brain is wired to seek emotional intensity during this stage of life. Even the smallest reminder of her past becomes a spark. That spark can grow into obsession. Left unchecked, it becomes fuel for her emotional detachment. By the time a man notices she's drifting, she's already replaced the present with nostalgia, not because she wants to leave you yet, but because the past offers her something that feels lost in her current life, the illusion of youth and the thrill of being desired. One of the most dangerous turning points in a woman's psychological shift happens when she begins spending more time with divorced or unhappy friends. These women don't just offer emotional support, they offer a new worldview, a worldview built on resentment, regret, and the belief that leaving a stable life is a form of empowerment. They become her emotional echo chamber, feeding her thoughts she never had before. What starts as harmless wine nights slowly transforms into therapy sessions where every complaint she shares gets reframed as oppression. Suddenly, her normal marriage problems become red flags. Your expectations become controlling. Her responsibilities become burdens. And the more she listens, the more she feels like she's missing out on the freedom her friends claim to have found. These friends aren't intentionally destroying her life. They're just desperate to justify their own choices. If they made decisions that cost them their families, they need her to make the same choices to feel validated. Misery loves company, and divorce loves validation. So they plant seeds. You deserve better. You shouldn't settle. You need to love yourself first. Over time, these small statements begin to reshape how she sees you, her marriage, and even herself. The woman who once saw you as her partner now sees you as an obstacle. Her home becomes a cage. Her marriage becomes a sacrifice. Her role as a wife becomes a limitation. The poison spreads slowly, disguised as empowerment. And once she starts believing she could be happier without you, the emotional drift accelerates, and she begins mentally stepping out of the marriage long before she ever physically leaves. Social media becomes gasoline on a fire that was already burning beneath the surface. A woman who feels invisible in her real life suddenly becomes visible online. A woman who feels unwanted at home receives attention from strangers with a single post. It creates an alternate reality where she feels admired again, youthful again, important again. And the more she scrolls, the more she compares her ordinary life to the highlight reels of women who seem to be living the freedom she craves. She doesn't see the truth behind those photos, relationship failures, loneliness, staged happiness. She only sees what she's programmed to feel, that she's missing out. Algorithms study her emotions better than her own husband can. If she clicks on a video about starting over at 40, the app floods her with more. If she watches a clip about leaving an unhappy marriage, she gets 10 new ones. Each swipe, each scroll, each heart reaction subtly rewires her beliefs about happiness. It convinces her that the life she has is too small, too boring, too disappointing. And the more she consumes these illusions, the more distant she becomes from reality and from you. And she begins posting selfies, seeking comments, tracking who views her stories, checking how many likes she gets. Every notification becomes a tiny hit of dopamine, confirming that she still matters. Meanwhile, your consistent love, steady, stable, real, becomes background noise. Social media doesn't just distract her from the marriage, it competes with you. And in her fragile emotional state, the fantasy often wins over the truth. As the internal crisis grows, you'll start noticing a dramatic change in her physical behavior. Suddenly she's obsessed with skincare routines she never cared about before. She's buying clothes meant for women 10 years younger. She's spending more time at the gym, taking pictures at flattering angles, and experimenting with makeup she hasn't touched in years. But this is not just self-care. It's desperation disguised as confidence. She's not trying to look. Every wrinkle becomes a threat. Every grey hair feels like proof she's losing the one currency she relied on her whole life, her beauty. The worse she feels emotionally, the harder she fights physically. That's why she'll jump into extreme diets, procedures she once mocked, or sudden style changes that make you wonder who she's trying to impress. But the truth is, she's not competing with other women. She's competing with her younger self, the version of her that lived in her memory, not reality. This phase is the most dangerous because it creates a false sense of empowerment. She sees temporary improvements in her appearance and mistakes them for healing. She feels a rush of confidence that blinds her to the emotional chaos beneath the surface. And the more she reinvents herself physically, the more she feels disconnected from the woman who built a life with you. She starts believing that maybe she deserves a new life to match her new look, a belief that pushes her one step closer to emotional detachment. Long before a woman ever walks out the door, she leaves emotionally. This is the stage most men notice, but by the time they realize something is wrong, they're already months behind. She becomes distant, cold, and oddly quiet. She stops sharing her thoughts, her feelings, her worries. She laughs less, touches you less, and avoids conversations that once came naturally. Her phone suddenly becomes her closest companion. She hides it, guards it, sleeps with it next to her. And when you ask what's wrong, she says the one sentence that should terrify any man: "I just need some space." Her mind is drifting into another world, a world where she imagines life without you. She begins fantasizing about freedom, about a fresh start, about being the version of herself she thinks she lost. Even normal arguments start to feel like reasons to leave. She rewrites history in her mind, turning minor disagreements into major patterns. She convinces herself she was unhappy for years, even if that wasn't true. Emotionally, she's checking out. She stops making plans with you, she stops initiating anything, no affection, no dates, no intimacy. Even small things like the way she says your name change. She becomes polite instead of warm, tolerant instead of loving. And the cruel part? She isn't pulling away because of something you did. She's pulling away because she's fighting a war inside her head, a war between the life she built and the fantasy she's chasing. And once she begins detaching, it becomes nearly impossible to pull her back. The most dangerous moment in a woman's midlife unraveling isn't when she feels sad, insecure, or nostalgic. It's when a specific man enters the picture, sometimes intentionally, sometimes by accident. It might be a coworker who compliments her haircut, a trainer who praises her progress, an old friend who suddenly reappears online, or even a stranger who gives her a little too much attention. It doesn't matter who he is. What matters is that he becomes the face she attaches to her emotional escape. She starts thinking about him more than she admits. She tells herself it's innocent, harmless, just a conversation, but emotionally, she's already crossing lines. His attention feels fresh, exciting, new. It makes her feel young again, desired again, alive again, and that feeling becomes addictive, stronger than logic, loyalty, or the years she spent building a family. She doesn't want him specifically. She wants the version of herself she becomes when he notices her. This is why her behavior suddenly changes. She becomes extra protective of her phone. She smiles at messages she refuses to explain. She mentions him too often, or not at all. She picks fights with you over small things because she needs to justify the emotional distance she's creating. Or she becomes strangely sweet, overly calm, because she's wrestling with the guilt of what she's doing. By the time a man senses something is off, the fantasy has already taken root. And once she attaches her emotional escape to another man, the marriage enters a stage that few husbands ever recover from. Once a woman emotionally crosses the line, something even darker begins. She starts rewriting the entire history of your relationship, not because she's evil, not because she wants to hurt you, but because she needs to justify what she's doing. If she admitted the truth, that she's acting out of fear, insecurity, aging panic, and dopamine withdrawal, she would crumble. So instead, she builds a new narrative where she becomes the hero, and you become the enemy. Suddenly, every small argument becomes years of emotional neglect. Every moment of stress becomes lifelong unhappiness. Every normal mistake you made becomes evidence you never cared. She tells her friends a version of the story where she's the victim. She tells herself a version where she's brave, and she tells you a version designed to hurt enough that you stop fighting for her. This is how she protects her ego. This is how she avoids guilt. This is how she convinces herself that blowing up her family is self-love instead of self-destruction. What hurts the most is that she genuinely believes this rewritten story. The woman you knew, the one who loved you, leaned on you, trusted you, is gone. She's been replaced by someone fueled by panic, validation addiction, and the desperate need to escape the reality of aging. This is the point of no return, not because she can't come back, but because the version of her who loved you no longer exists.